You may be wondering, what is this 67 all about? Well, I want to thank you for helping me celebrate my 67th birthday today. There will be no major birthday party celebration this year, I can assure you. I'd like to start off by talking about a timeline. On December 31st of this past year, I transitioned out as CEO of The Gathering Place, having founded the organization in 1998. On January 23rd, I boarded a plane with my best friend to spend a glorious month exploring Australia and New Zealand. On February 22nd, we landed back in Cleveland. 2 days later, I received an email from Mary Wright asking if I would consider giving a TED Talk to this year's annual scientific retreat. Talked to Ruth Carey a few days later and learned more about it and said I would be honored to do so. Then, on March 16th, this was the headline in the Washington Post. And as we all know, Governor DeWine locked the state of Ohio down. Now, a confluence of events and circumstances, including the emotional responses and the emotions of leaving 21 years of my life's work while being socially isolated and fearing for my life and my health and my family and friends and community watching what was going on in our country really threw me off my game. And then in early April, I received an email informing me that my friend, the very Reverend Tracey Lind, would be doing a presentation on Creative Mornings Cleveland. And I knew I could use a dose of Tracey. Now let me tell you a little bit about my friend Tracey Lind. Tracey is a retired Episcopal minister, a city planner, an author, an eloquent and remarkable woman. Tracey and I met in 2003 when we both participated in Leadership Cleveland. At the time, Tracey was the dean of the Trinity Episcopal Cathedral, a position she held for 17 years, until on November 2016, Election Day, a time I will never forget, she was diagnosed with frontotemporal degeneration, FTD. And Tracey knew that this would mean she would eventually lose her executive functions, writing, language, speaking. And so she and her wife, Emily, repurposed their lives and started traveling the globe up until the pandemic hit to teach people about FTD, hoping to destigmatize dementia. So on April 16th, I tuned in to Tracey's talk, Finding the Reason You Were Created. Now, she explained that everyone has a purpose and that our lives are that much more meaningful when we embrace and act out our purpose. Furthermore, one of her teachers explained that purpose was like a vocation where your passion intersects with the world's needs. She also said something that struck me deeply, and that is that our lives can be interrupted, sidetracked, or derailed. And what we needed to do was hit the reset button. Now, when Tracey's talk was over, I was in tears because what I learned and realized was that I had lost my sense of purpose, my personal why. And purpose is the sense of knowing that your life is valuable, meaningful, and important. So I've spent the last several months trying to recapture my essence and my purpose. And I come here to you today recognizing that we have all been impacted by the coronavirus pandemic. Social unrest, the polarization and politicalization of our society. And like me, many of you may also have experienced being interrupted, sidetracked, or derailed, and could benefit from hitting your reset button. Now, one of the ways to do this is to ask the question, what is your why? What gives you meaning? What excites you to get up in the morning? And when you embrace and live your why or your purpose, it has many benefits, some of which it helps you create your own roadmap. Decisions are easier to make because they're made synergistically with your purpose or your why. Additionally, you will tend to have more trusting, deeper, meaningful relationships because you will look for those who have likened values. Now, I believe that we're all born with a purpose. And as we grow and evolve, we're influenced in a number of different ways. Our family, our friends, our community, our faith, perhaps a mentor, a role model, circumstances, good or bad, that have happened in your life. Now, I grew up in the Jewish faith, and I was introduced early on to a core Jewish value, and that is tikkun olam, to repair the world. Perhaps some of you listening today have also been exposed early on to that value and have chosen your own professional path, in part understanding and embracing that. As I've been preparing for this talk, I revisited a concept I learned several years ago, introduced by Simon Sinek. Now, Simon is an author, an inspirational and motivational speaker. And he created this framework called the Golden Circle. And he did so sharing that it is for people who wish to be inspired or to inspire others. And that individuals and organizations that have the capacity to inspire act and communicate from the inside out. And that when they do, when they express the cause or purpose first, behavior and decision-making follows. And so I come to you today asking you to think about these concentric circles. First the why, emanating then out to the how, and then the what. So I thought this was a perfect opportunity to look at the Case Comprehensive Cancer Center's why, how, and what. And I took the liberty of going to the website and looking at what I believe is the center's why, to understand the causes and progression of cancer, and to use that understanding to develop treatments and to reduce the likelihood that our population will develop cancer and suffer from its consequences. Behavior and decision-making emanates out of that why for the center. And then the how is the mission statement. And I invite you to visit the site to review this statement, perhaps, sometime during this retreat. And then the what. This retreat, in part, is somewhat about the what. Earlier today, Dr. Gerson shared the updates and findings from research done through the center last year. Tomorrow, you'll have opportunities to really talk about funding and perhaps collaborations for future opportunities to seek grants with your colleagues. Now, I think about my why. And what I believe is it's to make a difference and move the needle forward. And as I reflect back on my professional career, that has been very consistent, and I want to share that with you. In the mid-'70s, I came out of social work graduate school at Ohio State University and went into my first professional position as a medical social worker at Huron Road Hospital, being assigned to psychiatry and oncology. And my interest with cancer began. And then I had my 2 children and continued working as a medical social worker in home care. Until at the end of the '80s, I was invited to join the faculty in the Department of Family Medicine at university hospitals to coordinate community and behavioral medicine in the family medicine residency. I also served as a social worker for the practice in Bolwell. Concurrently, I started a private practice that focused on chronic illness in the family. As a matter of fact, one of your colleagues, Paula Silverman, referred many women with breast cancer to me who she felt could benefit from more support. Now, during the '90s, the field of psychoneuroimmunology, how the mind affects the body, was becoming more and more prominent. I was also being introduced to integrative medicine techniques where one would look at the physical, emotional, spiritual needs of the individual. And then this happened. These are my parents, Anita and Lou Spandorf. They were both diagnosed 6 months apart with different forms of cancer. My father first with mesothelioma, and then my mother with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. They died 3.5 years apart, both at the age of 69. Now, here I had been a social worker all these years, and yet until I was thrust on this journey, I really had no idea what it was all about. I was fortunate. I had a wonderful support system. I found and searched for information and clinical trials. I got my stress released through exercise. But I wondered, what do most people do? So at the end of the '90s, when my daughter was going off to college, my husband at the time traveled, and my son was starting to drive, I thought, what do I want to be doing? And I decided to set out to hopefully meet a need in this community. And that was to complete the circle of cancer care. To add to that circle, addressing the mind, the body, and the spirit, meeting the psychosocial needs of not only individuals with cancer, but their family members that were on the journey with them. To help people develop the tools to cope effectively with the stress of cancer, put cancer in a place in their lives where it no longer controls them. So in July of 1998, I started the grassroots movement forward. And I talked to anyone and everyone who was willing to listen. And in 18 months, the groundswell was so tremendous that in January of 2000, we got the doors open. And the organization has not looked back. To date, the gathering place has served almost 50,000 different people. Now imagine a pebble in a pond and how that reverberates out, the number of lives that have been impacted. So the why for the gathering place: facing cancer and embracing life. The how: the gathering place is a caring community that supports, educates, and empowers individuals and families currently coping with the impact of cancer in their lives through programs and services provided free of charge. And the what are the myriad of programs that are provided at the gathering place. Everything from traditional support groups to healthy cooking classes, exercise programs, a full range of children's programs, Tai Chi, yoga, Reiki, massage, and a full-time medical librarian and libraries to help people find credible information and interpret that information. So, what lies next on my path? Interestingly enough, last fall, when I was getting together the legal papers, documents, to start my consulting practice, I named it MTN Strategies. And what MTN stands for is Move the Needle. And I look forward to working with other nonprofits to help identify their pain points, seek practical solutions, and help them move their needle. Additionally, I plan to do some volunteerism. As a matter of fact, my hope is I will interact with many of you listening today, because a few months ago, Dr. Gerson approached me asking if I would be willing to volunteer to develop and then fill a role as a research advocate for the center, bringing the lens of the patient experience into research discussions and out into the community. I'm also mentoring through the Case Venture Mentoring Program. And next month, I plan to start helping to get the vote out. So as you continue to live and work through these very challenging times, it is my hope that you will take some time to think about your why or your purpose that will give you meaning, remembering that purpose is the sense of knowing that your life has value, meaning, and importance. So I'd like to end with this quote from Mark Twain that I think is really important and appropriate. The two most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. Thanks so much for having me today.